Now that we have a database object that's able to open connections and perform queries, we need to try it out and make sure that it's all working. To just do that in a really rough way, open up index.php and we'll put some code here so that we can try it out. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to load in our database code. Now if you look over here at the directory structure, you'll see that index.php is the file that I'm working in. That's inside public. I need to go back a directory so that I can then go inside includes and load up database.php. And we'll do that with require once and / includes database.php. That will load in the database file. So that will define my class and it will instantiate the database variable for us so that we can work with it. And we can just test that real quick by doing a simple if database is set, echo true, if not, echo false. So that's the only thing that's happening on this page is that it loads in database. So there's no other way that it could be set. Let's just try that. I'll go into Firefox. And for me, that's going to be localhost and then inside ~Kevin /photo gallery public. That's where we want to be, index.php. Now, you may not need to put the index.php if your server is set up to automatically serve PHP index pages. And if you're on Windows, of course, you won't need to put in the ~Kevin at the beginning. But we can see that the result is true. That's the important part, is that it came back and it said, yes, it was set. Great. So let me just switch back now to index.php. Let's try one of our other methods. Instead of echo, is this working? I'm going to try echo and then ask our database object that we've created to run its MySQL prep method. And it's going to run it on a string. That's what it does, right? It works on values. So it's just a simple string. And it's working, question mark with a BR after it. Now, the important part is this apostrophe. SQL doesn't like apostrophes because it uses apostrophes when it's constructing its values. And that's what we need to escape. So what we're wanting to see is that apostrophe, does it get escaped? So let's just save that, switch back to Firefox. And sure enough, there's the slash in front of it, which makes it acceptable for SQL. And we can now use that. That value has been rendered safe for us. So those are the most basic tests we can perform. We made sure that the object was loaded in successfully, no problems there. Instantiated to a variable, so we saw the database is set, and we were able to call one of the methods on there. So we're able to see that that method works. So we know our basic object is working. If not, go back and double check, make sure that all your parentheses and brackets and everything are all closed properly and that there weren't any errors in there. This is your chance to troubleshoot. But I'm going to keep moving, and I'm going to go ahead and try doing some SQL. Let me just open this a little wider. And I've just got some real basic SQL to insert into my users table the values ID, username, password, first name, last name, and the values will be 1, and then the string for my username, which I'm just going to make K Skoglund. You can make it whatever you like. My password, I've made just secret PWD, and then my first name and last name. You can put in yours. And then all I'm doing is telling the database, run that query. That should perform the insert. Now, normally when we do inserts, we do more error checking to make sure it was inserted and everything. Right now, I'm just doing a really primitive check to see, did it work? And one way that we can test that without going into phpMyAdmin is just to search for that value and see if it's there. So run another SQL statement, select from users where ID equals 1, tell the database object to run its query method on that SQL. It's going to set the variable result set equal to the value that's returned. Remember, we had it return a value back to us. And then it's going to run MySQL fetch array on that result set to get the first user. And then from that user, return the username. Let's try it. Now, I'm just going to run this once because I want to insert into the database only once. And there it is. It worked. Now, if I try it again, you'll notice that I get a database query problem, because it isn't able to insert it into the same ID multiple times. So if you ran into problems there, you'll want to go into MySQL and remove that entry and then try again. Or you can simply take these 3 lines here and comment them out so that we only insert in one time. And after that, it runs without a problem, and we can make sure that we're getting back users. So if all of that works, we know that our database is working. While we're looking at this, I want to point out something to you. We talked about making our code so that it was basically database agnostic, that it didn't care whether or not we had MySQL or Oracle or whatever. But you can see our code here is actually asking for MySQL fetch array. That is definitely a MySQL thing, and if we switch databases later, that's going to break for us. And even though it's one of the methods we defined, we did the same thing up here when we said MySQL prep. We said that we would prep it for MySQL, but if we changed to an Oracle database or something later, then that obviously isn't going to make sense. So let's make improvement to our object. In addition to these methods here, let's add another one. I'm going to put it right above the private method, and I'm just going to call it public fetch array. All I did was take MySQL out of it. But that way we could have an Oracle adapter which would do fetch array, and it would do it in a different way. It might have a different way of handling it. That makes it agnostic. And then all it does is return the result of MySQL fetch array on the result set. And now we just say, okay, database object, go ahead and perform fetch array on the result set. For changing MySQL prep, let's just change this now to instead be escape value instead. And we'll come back over to our database object and we'll do the same thing. Instead of MySQL prep, it'll just be escape value. And now escaping the value can happen in whatever way it needs to happen for whatever database we're on. There are 3 other database neutral methods that I want you to go ahead and input here as well. We aren't using them yet, but let's go ahead and put them in here so that we're ready. We've looked at them before. We've got numRows, which performs MySQL numRows and returns how many rows are in a result set. We've got insertID, which returns the last inserted ID over the current database connection, and that's MySQL insertID. We've seen that before. And MySQL affected rows, how many rows were affected by the last thing, and each time we're just dropping MySQL off the front of it. And those are going to make for nice database neutral methods. And if a database adapter needs to be swapped in so that we're using a different database, our code doesn't break. We don't have to do a massive rewrite. We've already taken that into account when we wrote our database object. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's just make sure that it's all working. And sure enough, everything's still working fine. In the next movie, we'll take a closer look at how working with this database as an object is actually an improvement over the functions that we were using before.